Brown, Mysteries. Adventures in excitement and suspense, based on the best-selling novels by the slick storytelling sensation, Carter Brown.
How do you do, ladies and gentlemen? This is Carter Brown with another of my stories for you, a venture which I call The Widow is Willing. It's the account of an insurance investigator named Mark Hunt, who finds himself marooned on a lonely island in the company of an assortment of characters, male and female, one of whom could be a murderer. For my money, I prefer being locked in a lonely room with a typewriter, but there's no accounting for tastes. Well, here's Mark Hunt and his story.
When you get to the edge of the world, there's a river, and in the middle of the river is an island. That's where the Goldbrights live. It was a raw night which made you think of vampires and things that go eek in the night. There was a moon with low clouds scudding across it. I'd given the old character who owned a boat $5 to row me across. He pulled at the oars, and I watched the solitary light on the island getting gradually larger. Nearly there. Goldbright's been living on that island long.
He and his father before him and his father before that.
Yeah, what did his father before that do? To get banished, I mean.
That's some sort of Yankee joke?
Sort of. How did they get to the mainland?
They got a launch. You should have let them know you were coming and they descended.
Not for me, they wouldn't.
They ain't expecting you, huh?
That's right. Too bad about Henry Goldbright dying like that. Stepped over the balcony outside his bedroom and ended up on the stone jetty, 50 feet below, they say. The Goldbrights get on all right? Together, I mean. Yeah, talkative, aren't you?
We're here. You go up them steps and then on up to the house.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot. If I want to get back to the mainland again in maybe an hour's time, will you be around?
Around World's End at night, you must be crazy, mister.
Why?
You stay here long enough, you find out. Not a place to be by yourself, not at night. That's your bag. Goodbye.
The old guy pulled away and was lost in the night. I picked up my case and started up the steps which led to the path which led to the house. A gaunt, gray building. World's End. I thought the name was appropriate. As I pulled the bell rope, I wondered what Mrs. Goldbright would be like. Fragile, white-haired, with a quavering voice? Or more probably tough and hard and thin-lipped?
Yes?
This, I presume, was Mrs. Goldbright. She wore 15 denier nylons, black. She wore a form-fitting dress, black. And since she was a blonde, the black did things for her. And for me. She may have been a widow, but she was also a wow.
Yes, what do you want?
Mrs. Goldbright?
Yes, I'm Mrs. Goldbright.
My name is Hunt, Mark Hunt, from Excelsior Insurance Incorporated.
Yes?
I'm sorry to worry you at a time like this, but your husband had a policy with us for $50,000.
You're very prompt in paying your policies?
It's not quite like that, Mrs. Goldbright. I'm an insurance investigator. When a big claim like this comes along, the company naturally investigates it before they pay.
Perhaps you'd better come inside, Mr. Hunt. It's not very comfortable here on the doorstep. I don't quite understand the need for any investigation, Mr. Hunt.
Mrs. Goldbright, your husband died 2 days ago. He was insured for a large sum of money. Therefore, the company has to be sure there's been no foul play.
You mean they want to be sure my husband died of natural causes and wasn't murdered?
You could put it that way, I suppose.
The police are satisfied he died of natural causes?
That's half the battle.
The other half being to convince you, I suppose.
Well...
I think the best thing you can do is stay here, Mr. Hunt, at World's End, until you've completed your investigation.
That's very kind of you.
Not at all. It would be impossible for you to work from the mainland, and the sooner it's finished, the happier both of us will be.
Of course.
You better come and meet the others. Then we'll have dinner. This way, Mr. Hunt. They're all in the living room.
She led the way down the cold, stone-paved hallway into a large room with polished wood floors, which contained 5 people. 4 men and a woman.
Just a moment, everybody. I want you to meet Mark Hunt. He's an insurance investigator. This is my brother-in-law, Clem Goldbright.
Hello.
Clem was about 30 or so, dark, slim, dissipated, crooked grin and a sneer in the eyes.
This is John Cross, an old friend.
Hi there.
Cross was rugged, looked the good-natured college athlete type.
Roger and Mavis Beavis.
How do you do?
Hello.
Beavis was fat and 40, rimless glasses, a successful businessman. Mavis was a redhead with a ravishing figure. Every time my husband looked at her, he got a stupid look on his face. I didn't blame him.
And this is Michael Degrescu.
Delighted, Mr. Hunt.
Degrescu had a foreign accent. The name was Romanian. He looked smooth and suave and probably shrewd.
Well, now that you've all met, I'll do something about drinks.
An insurance investigator, eh, Hunt? Checking on my brother's death?
It's just routine, Mr. Goldbright, with any large claim.
In other words, it's a case of did he fall or was he pushed?
Clem, that's no way to talk in front of Lila.
Why not? She probably gave 3 cheers when she found him on the jetty. We all know their marriage was a mistake. She made the mistake. She married him because she thought he'd spend all his money on her, and he didn't.
Clem always puts things so beautifully. Here's your drink, Mr. Hunt.
One of these days you'll get a crack on a jaw for talking like that.
Such a rugged character, our Mr. Cross. The guy who never got past college, physically or mentally.
Please, that's enough. Mr. Hunt will think we're a bunch of lunatics.
It must be an interesting career, Mr. Hunt, being an insurance investigator.
It's just a job, Mrs. Beavis. Pretty ordinary most times.
Sounds rather sordid to me.
At least it's a job, Clem. Something you wouldn't know anything about.
We each take life as we find it, Mavis. Me with my brains, you with your looks.
Now, look here, Clem.
Mavis married you for your dough, Roger boy. And we all know why you married Mavis.
That's the gong for dinner. Let's move to the dining room, shall we?
We got through the soup, the meat, the apple pie and cream without any more of the Bob comments. Then we adjourned back to the living room for coffee. While Mavis put on some records and the others organized a game of bridge, I found myself left with the Romanian Michael Degrescu.
Are you interested in art, Mr. Hunt?
One specific kind, sure.
What kind is that?
Leg art.
Ah, you mean the cheesecake?
Mm-hmm.
I was referring to something else. Myself, I'm a collector of everything and anything that is beautiful, from women to paintings. The paintings in this room, for example, very fine. I offered Henry $100,000 for them. He refused. I'm hoping Lila will feel differently.
Well, good luck.
I think I will have it. It was a sin that a woman like Lila should have been tied to Henry. I hope to add her, too, to my collection of beautiful things.
I got the impression that John Cross was in the running there.
Puh, Cross. A moron with muscles. She will have more sense than that.
What the... Mavis, please.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put that on. I didn't know it was with the rest of the records.
A bad faux pas. That was Henry's favorite music. Beethoven, the Coriolanus Overture. I don't like it myself. It was playing the other night when it happened. I think poor Lila associates it with Henry's death. That was careless of Mavis. Careless.
Or deliberate. Everyone went to bed around 11. The room I'd been given was upstairs, overlooking the water. A sheer drop of 50 feet. It had started to rain, lashing against the window as though it was trying to break in. I was sitting having a last cigarette when there was a soft tap on the door. I opened it. Mrs. Goldbright stood there. I couldn't help thinking that Goldbright was a good description of her hair.
Could I talk to you for a moment, Mr. Hunt?
Sure, come in. Cigarette?
Thank you. Thank you. Must have been quite an experience for you, meeting our little group this evening.
That's an understatement. There's certainly a bunch of characters.
Clem was quite right, you know. The burning question is, did he fall or was he pushed? I'd like to know the answer to that myself.
Where were you when it happened?
In my room. Henry and I had separate rooms. The first thing I heard was his shriek as he fell.
You think someone could have pushed him?
They all had good reason to. So did I, if it comes to that. Henry was a good deal older than I am. He wasn't exactly a nice person. I'll be frank, I married him for exactly the reasons Clem stated. Clem himself has only a yearly allowance, but part of the estate reverts to him on Henry's death, so he had good reason to kill him. John Cross imagines he's in love with me. I've never encouraged his feelings, but he could have thought that with Henry out of the way, I might feel differently. Michael Degrescu
explained himself to me tonight. What about the Beavis couple, Roger and Mavis?
Roger's making a fortune marketing gadgets. He's the driving force, but Henry put up the money. Recently, Henry took a dislike to him because he married Mavis. I think Henry decided to withdraw his capital. Roger has staked everything he has on a new project. I know that at this juncture, the withdrawal of Henry's capital would ruin him.
So everyone had a good reason for wanting to see Henry die.
Yes, including me. I had no love for Henry, and with his death, I'll presumably inherit his money. I'll know tomorrow. The lawyer's coming to read the will.
Why tell me all this, Mrs. Goldbright?
I don't know. Just seems to help, having someone like you in the house, Mark. May I call you Mark?
Surely, Mrs. Goldbright.
Please call me Lila. And if you don't mind, I'll talk to you again. Might help me to keep sane.
Anytime, Lila.
Thanks, Mark. I think I'm going to like you. A lot.
She left, and I turned in. To the accompaniment of the wind and the rain beating against the house, I fell asleep. Suddenly, I was awake. Something coming from below, faintly from downstairs, had aroused me. The Beethoven music. It sounded eerie and terrifying in the night. There was something else, a voice, a whisper, weird and toneless in the room.
You are the one who can help. Eternity is forever. Yet eternity can be held in captivity, imprisoned for all to see. The second that plunged me into eternity, held forever. Search, and you shall be rewarded. And perhaps I shall be avenged.
With a supreme effort, I stretched out my arm for the bedside lamp and switched it on. But there was no one there. The room was empty.
Carter Brown, Mysteries. Adventures in excitement and suspense, based on the best-selling novels by the slick storytelling sensation, Carter Brown.
Have you ever woken up in a bedroom in the middle of the night and heard a weird, whispering voice, switched on the light, and found the room empty? Around the office of Excelsior Insurance Incorporated, I was considered a pretty tough investigator. Mark Hunt, the guy with a marble heart. But I didn't get much sleep the rest of the night, in that empty room in the gaunt Goldbright house, with the rain sheets whipping viciously against the window and the wind whining outside the walls. I was glad when daylight came. Daylight's such a nice, sane thing to see. Everything that sneaks out of the graveyard at midnight is back there before dawn. Who is it?
Cross. John Cross.
Okay, come in.
I was sent to fetch you, Hunt.
Lila
was wondering what had happened to you. It's late. Breakfast's over.
That's okay. I've kind of lost my appetite this morning anyway.
Why? What's the matter?
Oh, it's nothing really. Only I'm just beginning to understand that old guy.
What old guy?
The one who rode me over. He made a couple of cryptic comments about this place. I'm beginning to see what he meant.
You're not making sense, but that's not my business. I was told to get you. The lawyer's arrived.
Lawyer?
Sure, to read Henry Goldbright's will. They're all gathered in the living room, and Lila figured you ought to be there, seeing that you're investigating Henry's death.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'll get dressed right away.
Okay, I'll get back. If you time it right, you'll miss all the legal mumbo-jumbo and get there for the interesting part.
John Cross was right. By the time I crept quietly into the living room and took a seat, the legal eagle, a lean, lifeless-looking bird, was getting down to business.
Before reading the section concerning the actual beneficiaries, I must say that I did my utmost to dissuade Mr. Goldbright from the course he took. My efforts were of no avail, and he insisted on couching his will in its present terms.
Thank you, Mr. Daventry. Would you please continue?
And now, as to the disposal of my estate. I am well aware that my wife married me only for what she could get. Therefore, I have not the slightest intention of allowing her to squander the wealth it took my family 5 generations to amass. I leave her a legacy of $10,000 and trust it will be enough to keep her until she remarries. I might add that I have long suffered watching the sheep's eyes made at my wife by John Cross, and knowing he's practically penniless, cannot help feeling a certain satisfaction in knowing that if they marry, it will undoubtedly be a love match.
John, please.
The bulk of my estate I leave to my brother, Clem Goldbright. I realize that he is a waster, but I trust he has enough family pride to guard the family fortune. If my brother should die within 2 years of inheritance, my wife shall take over the whole estate. If she should die within a similar period, then the estate will revert to my friend Michael Dergrescu, who has for so long desired my paintings and other art treasures. There are other minor provisions, of course, $1,000 for the butler and $500 for the maid. And that, I think, is all. Has anyone any questions?
Yes, I have.
Yes, Mr. Goldbright?
That last condition, about the estate reverting on death, is that legal? Can it be contested?
Contested? Certainly not. It's a perfectly legal procedure.
But don't you see what it means? If Henry was murdered, if his fall wasn't an accident, it means there's a killer in this house. And that will is an open incitement to murder.
Come, Mr. Goldbright. Aren't you letting your imagination run away with you?
If I'm found one morning on the jetty like Henry was, that'll be a comforting thought.
The lawyer left after lunch. The rain hadn't let up, and that, combined with the terms of the will and Clem's outburst, produced an atmosphere like death row in a penal institution. Everyone retired early that night. I was back in my bedroom, and I was wishing it was someplace else, because the room kept reminding me of that whispering voice in the night. Since I couldn't stop thinking about it, I tried to figure out what the voice had been trying to tell me. Eternity can be held in captivity, it had said. Imprisoned for all to see. Of course. It meant a camera. If someone had taken a photograph as Henry plunged to his death, that was it. The voice meant that somewhere there was a negative that proved whether Henry fell or was pushed. Who's that?
It's me, Lila.
Oh, come in.
I brought a bottle and 2 glasses.
Lila, that's an inspiration.
That's what I thought. Here, you do the pouring. It's been such a dreadful day.
Oh, I won't argue with that.
I just couldn't stand being by myself.
Well, now you're not. Oh, here's your drink.
Thanks. You know, it's funny, isn't it?
Sure. What?
That will. When I think of all the time I've been here in this ghastly place, of all the time I endured Henry, what do I get as a reward? $10,000.
Henry seems to have been an eccentric character.
Henry was a heel, pure and simple. But don't let's talk about him.
Okay. What will we talk about?
You. You and me.
It sounds an interesting subject.
I like you, Mark. You're my idea of a man. I haven't known a real man these last few years. Is that a very awful thing to say?
Let me think about it. No, I don't think it is.
I'm glad. I wouldn't like you to think I'm awful.
I think you're beautiful.
Mark, the lights. They've gone out.
Yeah.
Mark! In the doorway. That figure. It's Henry!
As Lila's body collapsed to the floor, every hair on my head stood on end. In the doorway, bathed in an unearthly light, was the figure of a man with gray hair and a gray mustache. I grabbed for my gun. The figure was in front of me, but the laugh came from behind me. I whirled round, and when I turned back for the door, the figure was gone. I was heading for the door when I heard the voice again in the darkness.
Now, do you believe? Will you listen when I tell you that the secret of my death is held for all time, imprisoned in emotion, waiting to be found? Seek, and you shall discover.
Then suddenly the music stopped and the lights came on. I looked at my gun and then at Lila on the floor. As I picked her up and placed her on the bed, she stirred.
Mark.
Oh, it's okay, Lila, it's okay.
Did you see him?
I saw something.
It was Henry, back from the dead. Even from beyond the grave, he won't leave me in peace.
I don't think it was Henry. I fired at whatever it was, but my gun was empty. Someone's removed the clip. A genuine ghost wouldn't worry about bullets, but someone worried enough to take them out of my gun so I wouldn't fire any.
But who would do that? And why?
That's the $64,000 question. If we knew that, we'd know everything.
Mark, I'm scared. I can't go back to my room.
I've got a solution. Stay here.
Mark.
Yeah, we can finish the bottle. After breakfast next morning, we all gathered in the living room. Clem Goldbright had said he wanted to make an announcement, and everyone was wondering what it was.
Everyone's here? Good. I told you I had an announcement to make. Here it is. You all heard the terms of the will yesterday. You all know that World's End and everything that goes with it is my property.
There's no need to gloat.
You also heard me say what I thought of the will. Nothing more nor less than an open invitation to murder. Well, I have no intention of being murdered. So I'm asking you to leave, all of you.
Leave?
Now, wait a minute, Goldbright.
That's just what I won't do, Mr. Cross. Wait a minute longer than I have to. The inquest is this afternoon. It shouldn't take long. With no evidence, the verdict will be accidental death. And I'm asking you all to leave by tomorrow. The launch will be waiting for you at 10:30 in the morning.
But, Clem, that doesn't give us much time to pack our things. I've got all my clothes.
And all the low-down nasty...
You can call me all the names you like, Cross.
You might have some consideration for Laya, even if not for the rest of it.
The only person I'm considering is me. I'm sorry. 10:30 tomorrow morning. That's final.
I watched him stride out of the room, and I thought that boy was really scared. I got away from the rest of them and decided to take a walk around the island. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still lead gray, promising more. After I'd been out for about an hour and was heading back towards the house, I came on the figure of a woman. And what a figure. And what she was holding pulled me up short.
Well, hello there.
Hello yourself.
Nice to get some fresh air, huh?
Yeah. What's the camera for? You one of those photograph fiends?
Just a hobby.
I wouldn't have thought that you'd go in for photography. You're quite a surprising girl, Mavis.
Am I? One of the tragedies of my life is having a husband who's old enough to be jealous, but too old to be interesting. You look young enough to be interesting, Mark.
Well, thanks. What did you do before you acquired your husband?
Used to work in burlesque.
You like it?
Some of it. The time I worked with a magician, that was fun. Until his wife woke up to him.
Tell me, Mavis, did you think Henry Goldbright was murdered?
I wouldn't know and I wouldn't care. I never liked him and he never liked me. How much is the policy you'll have to pay on him?
$50,000.
Wow, that's a lot of hay.
Sure is.
And it depends whether he fell or whether he was pushed.
That's right.
Supposing someone gave you proof that he was pushed, would you pay them anything?
Of course. 20%'s the usual rate.
$10,000. That's not bad.
Thinking of claiming it, Mavis? Maybe you've got some proof, like a photograph or something?
A photograph of what?
Henry coming down with a view of the balcony behind him and maybe somebody standing on the balcony?
That's ridiculous.
Is it?
Whatever gave you an idea like that?
It was just something that came to me in the night. The inquest, as Clem Goldbright had prophesied, was straightforward and to the point. Verdict, accidental death, which meant we'd have to pay on the policy. It was late by the time I got back to World's End, and after dinner everybody got busy with their packing in preparation for departure in the morning. I took some liquor up to my room and locked the door. I didn't want any visitors, supernatural or seductive. Half a bottle later, I was asleep. But I wasn't destined for an undisturbed night. I grabbed my gun and made for the door.
Mark, did you hear it too?
Hear it. It'll haunt my
It
dreams.
sounded as though we're outside.
The balcony. Come on.
Oh, Mark, do you think...
I don't know what I think.
There's the balcony.
Lila, don't come near.
Cross, what is it?
I heard the scream. I came out and looked down. Now, keep away, Lila.
Why? Why, John?
Because there's a body on the jetty.
A body?
Who is it, Cross?
Take a look for yourself. Can you see?
Yeah, the moonlight's shining full on it. That's Clem Goldbright.
Carter Brown, Mysteries. Adventures in excitement and suspense, based on the best-selling novels by the slick storytelling sensation, Carter Brown.
Have you ever sat in the living room with a group of people after an announcement that one of them was a murderer? It's not the most soothing sensation. To reassure myself, I reminded me that I was Mark Hunt, insurance investigator, and what else could I expect if I insisted on investigating insurance? But it didn't help much. The rest of them, Lila Goldbright, Roger Beavis and his wife Mavis, the Romanian Degrescu, and the hunk of beefcake, John Cross, sat in a silence that was louder than screaming. Finally, Degrescu got to his feet.
It is no use sitting here like dummies. The police must be fetched. I shall get the launch and go.
Now, wait a minute.
Wait for what, Mr. Hunt?
I thought we decided the butler should fetch the police.
We did not decide. You did.
Makes sense, doesn't it? If one of us goes, he or she might not come back.
Do you insinuate that
I'm insinuating nothing. I just think it's better that all of us stay on the island.
I think he's right, Degrescu.
But I do not cross. Who is he to order anyone around?
Never mind that. The butler goes and you stay.
I shall be back in about an hour.
I'm sorry, pal. You won't be back because you're not leaving.
Take your hand from my arm.
I was expecting that.
Oh, if you want a fight, I'm happy to oblige.
Michael! Stop them, Roger!
There's no need, Mavis. Just for good luck. Now, Beavis, would you like to get the butler and send him for the police?
All right, Hunt. But I don't think you should have hit him.
What else was I supposed to do? Stand still and make like a punching bag?
Go on, Roger. Do as he says.
Very well. We'd better get the police here before everything degenerates into a wholesale brawl.
Lila, suppose you and Mavis do something about coffee.
That's a good idea. Come on, Lila.
All right, but what are you going to do about Michael?
Let him sleep it off on the floor.
That was quite a nice piece of work, Hunt. Where'd you learn to fight like that?
Special Service Division.
Yeah, so was I, 9th.
Oh, Europe, huh? I was with the 12th, in the Pacific all the time.
Yeah. Degrescu had it coming. Poor Clem was right. That will was a direct invite to murder. And the thing that worries me is Lila.
Because of what she said, you mean? About being suspected of it?
No. Because she'll be next on the list.
Next on? Of course. She inherits, and that makes Degrescu suspect number 1.
Oh. He's coming too.
What? I will remember that, Hunt.
Well, that's okay. Add it to your other treasures.
The coffee's just about ready. Lila's bringing it in.
Oh, great. Oh, I left my cigarettes in my room. Keep the coffee hot for me. In the turmoil and tension, I'd forgotten about the mysterious voice and the equally mysterious vision of Henry Goldbright back from the dead. I made the excuse about my cigarettes because I realized here was my chance to do a little looking around. I went upstairs and tried the door next to my room. It wasn't locked. I stepped inside and shut it quietly. The first thing I looked for was there, a ventilator in the wall separating this room from mine. Then I started on the drawers and the wardrobe and finally the suitcases. In the third suitcase, I struck it lucky.
Find what you were looking for?
Yeah, Mavis, I did. A throat microphone, an amplifier, gray wig, gray mustache, spirit gum, and phosphorescent paint.
The real little detective, aren't you?
It was when you told me you'd worked in burlesque and once worked with a magician. Yeah, nifty gadgets, these throat mics. Fit them onto the throat, they amplify the vocal cords and produce that horrible whisper. And the wig and mustache, with a suit treated with a luminous paint, provided quite an effective ghost.
I thought so.
Of course, it was your husband, Roger, who did the talking and the appearance, with the amplifier and the ventilator. Oh, you must have been downstairs turning on the musical effects, that Beethoven record.
That's right.
Yeah, what I don't get was why. Why the elaborate setup to give me the idea of a photo of Henry's murder? What did you expect me to do?
I hoped you'd mention it.
I still don't get it.
I was out there on the jetty when Henry came over the balcony. I had the camera with me. It was terrible.
And you got a photograph?
No, I didn't. I was so scared I didn't even look up. But afterwards it occurred to me that if Henry had been murdered, and if I had a photograph, it'd be worth a lot of money to the murderer.
So?
So I talked. I dropped hints to everyone about the camera and about Henry.
Mm-hmm. Figuring that the murderer would know what you were talking about because he'd have seen you from the balcony.
He or she. I wouldn't know. Then the next morning there was a note under our door addressed to me. It said if I left the negative in an envelope in the second drawer of the bureau, I'd be paid $20,000.
What did you do?
I left a note there saying that I wanted the cash first. In the morning the note was gone, but there was no answer. Then when you arrived...
You hit on this weird and wonderful way of giving me the idea that a photo existed.
Yes. I wanted you to talk about it, but you didn't.
Yeah, so then you dreamed up the gag of Roger playing ghost, taking the precaution of removing the clip from my gun first.
Yes. Neither Roger nor I figured on Laya being with you. Fortunately, he had the throat mic and used it to distract your attention and get away.
Yeah, but why go to all that trouble in the first place? Why invent a photograph that doesn't exist? You could have got yourself murdered, you know.
We needed the money. Henry withdrew his backing for Roger's factory, and we've got a big project underway. But it won't be ready for market for another 3 months. We'll go bankrupt if we don't get some money to see us through.
Seems a heck of a risky way of getting it. Well, I'll shut this case. We better get downstairs, back to the others.
You're going to tell them?
No, I don't think so. You've been a big enough dope to deserve it, but I don't see how it's going to help anybody. Besides, that gag about the photograph might prove useful yet. There was a gray dawn breaking outside, and the rain had come back. I figured that the police had brought it with them. The local lieutenant, a short, stocky guy named Wilder, who obviously considered me an amateur and a nuisance, started asking questions. He didn't stop for 2 hours, getting nowhere and covering the same ground so many times that everybody was sick and tired of it. Everybody except Wilder, that is. He was the original persevering kid.
It's a conspiracy. Here's Clem Goldbright lying dead on the jetty, just like his brother. And what do I get? Nothing but dumb looks and even dumber answers. Some of you must know something about it. One of you, at least, is a murderer. Maybe more than one. Maybe all of you are in a conspiracy.
Now, why don't you talk some sense, Lieutenant? I'm fed up to here with all the yakety-yak. I want to get to bed.
Don't you talk to me like that, Hunt, or I'll toss you in a cell and I'll break you with that insurance company.
Oh, nuts.
Much as I dislike to agree with Hunt, he is quite right. You have asked all your questions, Lieutenant, many times. I suggest you let us get some rest now. We shall all be here. There is no way to leave the island except by launch. So you can question us later if you wish.
All right. But don't think you're going to get away with this, any of you. I haven't started on you yet.
Lieutenant, you kill me. With repetition.
We'll take Clem Goldbright's body back to the mainland, and we'll take your launch too, Mrs. Goldbright.
But, Lieutenant...
Sorry, ma'am, but that way I can make sure you all stay here. Pleasant dreams.
Pleasant dreams? Is he kidding?
Now, there's a guy with a gruesome sense of humor.
He'll be leaving one of his men on guard here, surely.
He didn't mention it.
But we're marooned on the island now, and there's a murderer among us.
Roger, don't keep saying that.
I haven't said it before, my dear.
Well, everybody else has, and I don't like it.
I agree. It is not a cheerful thought.
It's about as cheerful as a wet Sunday in an igloo.
Personally, I think we all ought to hit the hay and get some sleep.
Sleep? I don't think I'll ever sleep again.
Now, take it easy, Lila, honey. Come on. Roger and I'll take you upstairs.
Yes, of course. Along, my dear. You'll see that you're all right.
Thank you, Roger. You too, Mavis. You're sweet.
Hunt, Cross, you're not letting her go with them?
Why not?
What if one of them is the killer? Lila is in danger. I will go after them. They will not try anything if I am there.
Hey, now.
Oh, let him go, Cross.
Are you crazy? I'm not supposed to have any brains, but the identity of the murderer sticks out a mile to me.
DeGrescu?
Sure. He's got that collector's kink. He wants those paintings, and he doesn't care how he gets them. And with Clem dead, there's only Lila standing in his way. Now, come on.
Don't bust your blood vessels. If DeGrescu's the killer, he won't dare try anything with Roger and Mavis there. If it's either of them, he's there.
What if the Beavises are in it together? Well, you can stay if you like. But if I catch that DeGrescu anywhere near Lila's room, I won't be responsible for what happens to him.
I was left alone in the living room. I had a last cigarette and a last drink and listened for any uproar from upstairs. But there wasn't a sound. I figured everyone's nerves had probably calmed down and they were all safely in bed. I finished my drink and decided to follow their example. It was pretty comfortable under the blankets with the weather whining outside. I was just dropping off to sleep when a stray thought slid into my mind. A thought so obvious that I could have kicked myself for not remembering it before. It concerned the non-existent photograph that the Beavises had dreamed up. Only Roger and Mavis and I really knew that the photograph didn't exist. As far as the others were concerned, it could be real. I turned over on my back and reached for a cigarette and started to think of what use I could make of that when something was added to the music of the weather. It was the Beethoven music. I leapt out of bed, grabbed my gun, and had just reached the door when the sounds came. I yanked the door open, charged into the corridor, and cannoned into Cross.
Lila. That was Lila. She was the next on the list, and the killer's got her.
Carter Brown, Mysteries. Adventures in excitement and suspense, based on the best-selling novels by the slick storytelling sensation, Carter Brown.
Have you ever felt an ice-tipped finger hit the base of your spine and slide all the way out to the back of your skull? That was how I felt when the 3 shots and the scream shattered the silence. In the insurance racket, they consider Mark Hunt a strong character. In the Goldbright house, I considered Mark Hunt a scared kid. Mark Hunt wasn't arguing with me. How could he? He's me. When John Cross grabbed my arm and yelled frantically that it was Lila who'd screamed, my heart was in my mouth, but my gun was in my hand. Cross and I ran for Lila's room.
Lila? She's not moving.
Don't go off half-cocked, Cross. Let's take a look.
What has happened? I heard shots.
And the scream! It sounded like Lila!
Come on, quickly. The door's open.
Hunt, is Lila...
It's okay. She's still breathing. She's only fainted.
Fainted? Then she has not been killed?
Oh, thank heavens.
But the shots... There were 3 of them.
Yeah, and if you look at the wall over the bed, you'll see where they ended up. She had a very lucky escape.
I'll kill him. I'll kill him!
The question is, who is him?
Yes, that is it. Who fired the shots?
You have the nerve to ask that, you murdering swine. Wasn't your fault those bullets missed. I ought to take you apart with my bare hands, but I'm going to save you for the police, DeGrescu.
You are raving.
Stop it, both of you. Lila's moving. It's all right, honey. Everything's all right.
What happened? It was dark. The door opened. I saw a gun. There were shots.
It's all finished now, Lila, and you're safe. The shots missed.
Did I scream?
Did you scream? Baby, you made more noise than a hula girl huddled on an iceberg.
I suggest we all go downstairs. I think there's safety in numbers tonight.
An excellent idea. I would not fancy going back to my own room now.
You don't have to worry. You wouldn't try to shoot yourself. More's the pity.
Cut it out, Cross. Let's get downstairs, as Beavis says.
Can you manage, Lila, honey?
Yes, of course I can, John. I'll be all right now.
Okay. Hey, you and Cross go first, Lila. Then Beavis and DeGrescu. I'll bring up the rear with Mavis.
Hang on to my arm, Lila, darling.
Thank you, John.
I am glad to be behind Mr. Cross. With his crazy notions, I would rather not be in front of him.
Well, it's no use looking to me for protection. I've Never been the physical type.
You can say that again, kid.
Never mind your disappointments, Mavis. Listen to me.
What, Mark?
When we get downstairs, anything I say about the photograph, you back me up.
Why? What are you going to do?
Set a little snare for the killer, that's all. When we filed into the living room, someone realized it was breakfast time. What with the death of Clem Goldbright the night before, the hullabaloo with the police, the hours had been turned upside down. It was after everyone had eaten that I decided to try my idea. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got something to say. This situation can't go on any longer. I had intended keeping quiet until the police return sometime tomorrow morning. But that's impossible now.
What are you talking about, Hunt?
Keep quiet about what?
Simply this. The identity of the murderer.
You know who it is?
Yes, I know who the murderer is.
Who is it, then?
You may remember after Henry Goldbright's death, Mavis mentioned a photograph. I believe she spoke of it vaguely to everyone. I'm sorry, Mavis, I have to tell this story.
Yes, Mark, of course.
Mavis was on the jetty when Henry was killed, and she had her camera with her. She saw a figure on the balcony, but the distance was too great for her to recognize who it was. But being a keen amateur photographer, she automatically raised her camera and got a shot.
Of the murderer?
She was desperate for money, both she and Roger. So Mavis thought the murderer would pay heavily for the photograph. She didn't care whether Henry's death was ever revealed as murder or not. She had no love for Henry, as long as she obtained enough money to keep their business solvent.
But I don't understand. Why did Mavis mention the photograph to everyone? Why not only to the murderer?
Because, like a lot of women amateur photographers, Mavis can take a picture, but she can't develop and print the film. So all she had was the exposed film. She didn't know who the murderer was. Then Mavis turned the film over to me. I can develop a film and print it. And once the film was developed, the murderer was known.
Who is it?
I think it better for everyone's sake if I don't tell you that. That must wait until Lieutenant Wilder and his men return in the morning. In the meantime, I'm going to my room. I shall stay there until the police arrive. I just want to add that I have a gun and I have no intention of sleeping. That's all. And that was it. The trap set, baited, and ready to snap. I didn't really feel as confident as I sounded, but there's one thing I've always believed. If you're going to bluff, you might as well make it good. I left them looking amazed and wondering and went upstairs to my room. I checked my .32. This was no time to have a gun that was empty or was likely to jam. And then I settled down for the long wait. And a long wait it turned out to be. All through the rest of that day, I sat in my room and lit one cigarette after another and gazed at the view from my window. The sky changed from pearl to smoky to leaden gray. The water rippled and splashed and tumbled under the wind until darkness fell and I couldn't see anymore. I opened the window. Somewhere there was a faint glimmer of moon. That and the glow from my cigarette made the only light in my room. I wondered if I'd die from nicotine poisoning before I had a chance to find out who the murderer was. The strain was stinging at my nerves. Against the sound of the wind, I heard the murmur of voices as the occupants of World's End went to their rooms, to bed. All except one of them, I thought. And he or she would be waiting, as I was, till the house was completely still. The wind had changed its note. I looked at my watch in the darkness. Its luminous hands pointed to 1:30 a.m. My eyes felt as though 2-pound lead weights were hanging from their lids. I'd had no sleep for about 36 hours, and it was as much as I could do to keep them open. And then, from behind me, from the window which I'd left open, I heard a small sound. Someone was coming in.
Don't try anything foolish, like grabbing for your gun. I'll pull the trigger before you can hope to get it.
Okay.
The film, the negative, where is it?
This is strictly for laughs. It doesn't exist.
Don't stall. Where is it?
I told you it never existed. Sure, Mavis was there and she had a camera, but she never took the picture.
You're lying.
It was a bait, and you swallowed it.
If it doesn't exist, then that's all I want to know. That puts me right in the clear. Dispense with you, and no one can pin it on me.
You certainly put on a good act. A dumb college boy who never grew up. Grief and outrage when poor Lila was nearly killed. Only you never intended to hit her with those bullets, did you, Cross? You just wanted to make it look as black as possible for the Gresco.
Of course. Rather clever of me, I thought. I'll marry Lila and get all the dough I want. And neither you nor anyone else is going to stop me, Hunt.
Maybe.
No maybe about it. That fool Beavis girl had me worried. Those notes we exchanged, I thought you really had got a photo. I would have paid for it, too, but where was I going to get the money from? That's why I ignored her last note. I hoped her greed would keep her mouth shut. I thought she knew who I was and had realized that I'd have to wait to get the money.
That will of Henry's must have upset your calculations a little when you realized Lila wasn't getting all the money.
Keep your voice down. Yeah, it threw me for a while. Then I realized that once I got rid of Clem, the whole estate would be Lila's. So it didn't matter very much.
You don't think you'll get away with it, do you?
But I will. There's nothing surer. Yeah, I'm afraid we'll have to terminate this conversation. If you've any prayers, Hunt, say them now.
Eternity is forever.
What's that?
The ghost of Henry Goldbright. There's one thing about ghost voices. Their timing's terrific.
It's a trick and you won't get away with it.
There's one advantage about sitting in a room all day. You get to know it so well that it doesn't matter when it gets dark.
I'll get you.
Yeah, that was your one chance. Too bad you missed.
The window. I'll take you with me.
Not if I can help it. That's right.
And the character who meets it is my hero, Sebastian Shaw, a private detective. So this is Carter Brown saying, so long for now. Be seeing you.
In The Widow is Willing, you heard Lyndall Barber as Lila Goldbright, while as Mark Hunt, you heard our star, Richard Meikle. The Carter Brown Mystery Theatre, based on the best-selling novels by Carter Brown, is dramatized and directed by Maurice Travers for Grace Gibson Radio Productions.